Welcome to the Leadership Labs with DeepRec.ai, a podcast where we delve into the fascinating world of deep tech entrepreneurship, company founders and venture capitalists. I'm your host, Anthony Kelly, and I'm thrilled to have you join us in this exciting journey. In each episode, we explore the minds behind groundbreaking technologies, the visionaries who dare to push the boundaries of innovation, and the investors who fuel the growth of tomorrow's game changers. Welcome to this week's guest is Peyman Pouryekta. I think Peyman, we've been in the same networks and have been chatting on and off for almost 6 years now, and we have the luxury of hearing about his background today, hearing about how he's gone from being a successful CTO into now where he works with other founders and helps them with organizing their engineering team. And that comes even down to engineering culture, team communication, hiring processes, and even setting goals for your engineers. But look, before we get into that, Peyman, how are you doing? What's going on?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, no, look, good to have you here. I think the last time we spoke, you were a CTO, and I think since then you've gone on to advise double digits amount of companies, which is pretty spectacular, right? But look, this isn't something you've always done. You know, you weren't always a CTO, you weren't always an advisor. Why don't you kind of give us a bit of an overview into your background and what sort of got you to where you are today?
Yeah. So I started my career in 2005. And I started as a media designer, to be honest. Like, I joined a company, and they asked me in the first step, okay, are you interested also in technology? And I was really much interested in technology. My first idea was to become a software engineer, but there was no job out there. So I started as a media designer, created websites and all of these different things. And we worked together on Java applications. Like, I learned a lot on how to develop web applications. And at that point, we didn't have really the difference between front and back end and site reliability and stuff like this, like I did everything at that point. And I worked with this team around about 7 years. And parallel to that, like when I was working full time on the weekends and also sometimes after work, I went to university to do my bachelor degree and then later also master degree in management. Because for me, it was interesting to not only understand one area, like I had some knowledge in design and I figured out how to develop software and understand the technology concepts. And then it was interesting for me, okay, what is the bigger picture? How can I manage this whole thing? What about the business? And what are the overall goals and what kind of strategy can I execute to be successful for a company? And yeah, I did this till 2013, and then I came to Berlin and worked mainly in the startup area. So it's now almost 10 years in different kinds of startups. And one of the biggest startups which I worked was in the real estate field. It was 2015 when I joined the team. I was one of the first engineers. And we worked on AI technology at that time. It was mainly information extraction from real estate contracts. And the team had a strong growth. Like we were at some point around about 100 people, an office in London, one in New York. And I was responsible then as a director of engineering for around about 25, 30 people, something like that. And my work as a software engineer and then becoming a director of engineering was very different, right? Like if you have small teams, it's pretty easy to manage them. You don't need to manage them really. If you have just like 4 or 5 people around you. But when you're 25, 30 people, you need to set up kind of structure, think of how you can create a nice culture, a nice environment for everyone where they can develop further and get the best out of themselves and become the best next version of themselves. So that was pretty tricky. And yeah, I had one or two other stops and other startups, and then I realized that a lot of companies are asking me, like many startups, how did I manage to do this kind of growth period? Because they had similar issues, like this kind of growing pain, which you have. Like, first of all, finding the right people is an issue, and then they need to fit into what exactly you want to do in the future and be on a level, on the technical level, that it can develop the whole product and the startup and make it ready for the future. So it's pretty tricky, especially when you have like these kind of engineers which are there already for some time, and then you hire 10 more people and everyone is new, and you have sometimes some kind of issues in between these people, for example. And yeah, these are the things which I was busy with then, and I started to be a sparing partner for CTOs, or sometimes also for management, because if they don't have enough technology knowledge, they also asked me to make some workshops with them or something like that. And the second part is interim role, like interim CTO role. If they really have a gap, and the existing CTO will not go on with them in the startup, so then I jump in to fill this gap for, let's say, 3 months, 6 months, something like that. And I help them also to find a candidate which is good for this position for long term.
Yes. Nice. I guess look, first question that jumps to my mind is ultimately it's probably I don't want to say the most stressful, but it probably is sort of what you've taken on. And most people, when they've done it once, they're like, oh, get me away from it. I don't want to do it again. But you've actually gone the complete opposite way, and
Yeah.
this is now where your specialism is. Like, where do you get the motivation? I'd say, let's say, first off, nice, easy. Where does the motivation come from to do it again? Particularly when it's not always an easy task, or even in some cases a nice task.
Yeah, no, it's not easy at all. I like this kind of challenge so much because I could see that I had such a strong growth in this period. Like when I see that I was a software engineer and then I was busy with so much different kind of tasks and became really someone on the C level. Like the personal growth is really strong, and I didn't had any kind of or not much support at that time. Like I did a lot of mistakes, and I think if you have someone on your side who can guide you through these kind of through these challenges and different kind of issues which you will have, it is much easier, and you can even become better than I became. Like even get more stronger on more skills on different levels. So I really like to help to avoid these kind of issues which I had.
Nice, yeah. So how do you explain? So right now you call yourself the sparring partner or the interim CTO.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And when I say what does that mean, I mean if you were to say, you meet an old friend in a pub, down a bar, and they say, "What do you do?" Some people might not really understand what that fully means, but how would you explain it?
I usually say that I help startups in the tech and product field. So that's the easiest thing to understand in general what I'm doing. But I give you an example on the sparring partner role. So I was working with a startup, and they were aware that soon they will be acquired from a bigger corporate. And they had a really strong software engineer who was managing, I think, about 10 people. And they were also aware that this person might need would need some support as soon as the company and the team will grow, and you will be acquired by a company, by a corporate. There will be other departments. He needs to be able to talk to the management of this corporate. So it was mainly like leadership skills, not so much on the technology side, because there he was really skilled. And that was the scenario where I jumped in as a sparring partner. So we did some leadership workshops together for I think around about a week. And then based on that, I did a lot of follow-ups, like ongoing coaching sessions, you can call it, like every 2 weeks, in the beginning every week, later every 2 weeks, to talk about specific scenarios and specific issues which he had in the company. And that is very helpful because you have someone to reflect on the topics and you have this outside view, because I'm not involved, right? Like I'm not emotionally somehow involved, or even a business side, I'm not really involved. And it is really helpful for him or her to have just an honest outside view and take decisions based on topics when you can reflect. So that was my main task that's my main task as a sparring partner, to help to find the right decision. I'm not taking the decisions for them. I just help them to understand and have maybe different kind of perspectives.
Yeah. No, it's good. Good to hear. Because, I speak with a lot of people who might be on the other side of this, right? Maybe not necessarily going for to be acquired, but maybe they are getting investment, they're getting funding, they're generally those younger people that never had access to a coach or a mentor. So just good to sort of see what can be expected out of it. So, I want to really get into this because it is one of the, in my opinion, it's very similar for me, growing a team, a sales team or an engineering team. Growing a team isn't easy, no matter what it is, and ultimately we face similar challenges, right? And I think this is where I've really been keen to hear from you. One of the things that you've said as well, that you've worked with engineering teams on and founders, is communication. And for me, like, communication it's daily, it's weekly, it's monthly. It's different messages at different times. It's the pre-message, it's the message in the meeting, it's the follow-up message after the meeting. Good communication takes time. It takes a lot of energy to even think about. But look, I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And first off, what's communication mean to you? And then if we talk about what's good communication.
Yeah, it's one of the most important tasks, to be honest. Like, you need to do a really good job, especially when you want to take care of a bigger team. And I agree with you. It might be similar in other departments, but I think, for example, the sales department is still different from an engineering department. What I really try to do is to have a trustful relationship with every employee who's directly working with me. And I think one important part is also to work with specific goals together with the engineers to figure out what they want to achieve on the business level, but also on the personal level, to better understand, okay, what do they want to become? Like, if they join the company and they want to become at some point a senior software engineer or an architect or something like this, how can I help this person to get there? And at the same time, how can he fulfill the business goals on the product side, on the technology side, which needs to be fulfilled? And then you need to, like, I try to delegate this. Also, delegation is also part of communication, on how to do that. Also, communication is also sometimes to not say things, like sometimes you need to also give them space to take their own decisions and figure out stuff by themselves. And at the same time, it's pretty important to track and to control if everyone is fulfilling what they promised. And I think this is something where you can manage by example, like if you are able to show that how it should work and how you do it, and other people can follow, then that's usually the best scenario. And besides that, it's not a one-man show often, like you have maybe 2, 3, like imagine you have 30 people or something like this in your team, and you have maybe a few, like 4 or 5 people who are strong in what they're doing. They can be a kind of have a kind of helping functionality for you in the communication, or in this kind of being an example for the rest of the team. It's not only bundled to yourself, like it's also some kind of, it's again also some kind of delegation.
Yeah. Now I've a question on this, and you know what? It was something that was posed to me by another guest. They questioned me around the topic where I said, yes, you want to understand, the motivators of your employees. You want to know what's important to them. You want to get into a level where you know their kids' names, their wives' names, their hobbies, their favorite football teams, right? You want to become really friendly. And he was completely against it.
Yeah.
He disagreed. He feels that when you go to work just to work. And
Yeah.
looking at some research into it, and I feel there is like a nice element, and this is where for me sometimes it's hard to muddle or get that communication right. There's an element where you don't want it to be considered family. People use the word family. I would disagree, because if a family member comes in and punches you in the face, they're still your family. If a team member does it, they're not your team member anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a clear distinction of it, but you have to really get those lines correctly.
Yeah.
Have you been in similar situations? Not to say you've been punched in the face, but
Yeah.
have you been in situations where your effort spent into getting to know your team starts to get misconceived as something else? Maybe people are telling you things that they shouldn't tell you, even though you're their CTO, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I had this situation, and to be honest, like every individual in your team is pretty unique, and some of them like it, some of them don't like it. If you want to go after work for some drinks or for some food, maybe for some people it's already too much. Like I think it needs to be authentic. I think that's the most important part. If you try to artificially be the best friend or the I don't know, like the best buddy or something like this, then it will usually not work out. I had, for example, once a partner, and he was so much focused on meeting me, my family, my wife, my kid, that at some point it felt like, okay, why are you so intense on that topic? And at some point it feels also dangerous, because it's still a business relation, and you share a lot of private information, which people, if they want, can use against you also. So I think it needs to be very much in a kind of authentic way. Like what you can do is, like you asked in the beginning, what is the motivation, right? I think it's pretty hard and pretty impossible to understand what everyone's motivation is, to be honest. But what you can do is, and what is pretty easy, to be honest, to understand what is demotivating, And if you don't do that, then you're already on a good way. So, for example, I would say a lot of people don't like a lot of hierarchies, a lot of control functionalities, a lot of micromanagement and stuff like that. So if you leave that out and if you don't do that, you're already on a good way. Yeah, that's mainly my strategy. And besides that, I try to create an environment where people can decide. Like I offer, for example, from time to time to go on a dinner with some of the team members, and everyone is free to join or not. And if people join and they have fun, perfect. And if somebody wants to go home because he sees that's really as just a business, and he wants to be home with the family, that's also fine. But I will still take a look if he's fulfilling his job. Like this is how I manage that usually.
Yeah. I mean, then again, yeah, another win in on this, right, is good working relations. I mean, there's so much evidence backing this up. Good working relationships with your colleagues
Yeah.
improves work performance, improves team performance. You can't you can't force him. You can't make Johnny come for dinner when he's got family. Like how would you go in? And this is where I want to say, let's say if we say create an expectation around, I guess, and I don't want to say high performance, but ultimately, if you see high performance is everyone knowing everyone in the team and that this is important to you because this could be, how do you then create that communication or that expectation that Johnny, not that he feels like he has to come, but he wants to come. He wants to come for the team. He wants to be part of it.
He needs to have an interest, right? Like, imagine why would you join an event, or why would you not join an event? You would usually join an event because there's a specific interest which you have, and you have maybe a benefit. Maybe there's some value for you. And I think it's a one by one. Like, you have to figure out what exactly. If you have really a person who's really blocking and who doesn't want to join at all, then I think it's worth it to have a deeper conversation and try to figure out really what would be interesting for this person. And then maybe go into that direction to invite him for, I don't know, going and playing billiard or something like that, like, but I think to be very honest with the people is one of the first steps which helps. Like, you can even say, like, for example, like, everyone is joining, you're the only one who's not joining, and it creates sometimes a weird feeling. Like, it feels sometimes like maybe you don't want to hang out with us, like, everybody likes to hang out with you, like to work with you. If that's the case, right? You should not lie about that, but if that is the case, then yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, we're not having this conversation because we don't mind if you don't come.
No, but I think it's important to be very honest to the people. If you see there's an issue, and if you see somebody is really not involved at all, and feels like, you can tell them, it feels like you don't care, like, it feels like you don't care. And for us and the whole team, it's important that we are sometimes together, and it's also important that you are together with us here. We have sometimes drinks, we maybe play a game, go out. I guess you guys have also, like, I think every startup or every company has from time to time some incentives, right?
Yeah. I mean, we try to do them monthly, quarterly, half yearly, and yearly, just to
Yeah.
keep them engaged, right? And theirs are all based off a target. So for us to say it creates an easy common goal, right? We create something that people want to do. You go to a Michelin star restaurant. If we hit this target,
Yeah.
everyone wants to go to a Michelin star restaurant, right? But if you do it within this timeline, you get a half day off work. Easy. Message is clear. People know, people want to be there because they also get a half day off work. I don't know if it's because they want to be there or they get the time off. But I think even eventually, all these little things, they lead down to it being on a Friday, or in our case, like every Thursday, everyone will be in the office. There'll be almost 100 people, right? And every Thursday, there was almost about 70 people in the summertime, mostly having a beer.
Yeah.
So I think it's been set, and it's hard to create these things, right? Because we had a lot of challenges trying to get everyone to come in on a Thursday.
Yeah.
It was a lot. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me give you another example, which just to make a bit clear, because like a lot of startups, they offer free drinks on a Friday, for example, or fruits, yoga courses, and stuff like that.
We
right?
got all those.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And I mean, it's good. It's good to have that, right? But it should be in balance. If 50% of the people don't use yoga courses, maybe you should have something additionally, so that the rest of the 50 people have also something interesting. That's one thing. And I think it becomes a bit cynical when you understand, okay, because I saw these kind of offers, like the market average of a salary, it was 20% less than what you would usually get. But then they claim, but you get free drinks on a Friday, you get some kind of fruits for free every day. You can't eat so much fruits and drinks to have this kind of 20% more on salary, you know?
They're not going to pay your bills. Apples and oranges do not pay the bills.
No, I mean, it's really nice and it's really helpful and it's a good thing. I'm not saying like don't do that as a startup, but I say do this on top of what you offer, you know, like, and I think some companies don't do that. They offer this kind of additional things just because they have the feeling they need to do it, you know, because everyone is doing it, and we need to be attractive as an employee, you know. Yeah. And like if people figure out, okay, I'm just getting 20% less on salary just for these kind of a few bananas and a beer, then that feels very cynical for them and they don't feel really valued.
I totally agree. I definitely don't think underpayment is there. And I guess I wanna talk to you then about like creating an engineering culture. And I mean engineering culture not only in how you do your job, but how do people feel in it. So we've talked about trying to get the engagement in, as a team event. But ultimately it's a big challenge, right? As I said, in our business, we had big issues trying to get people to come in on a Thursday because everyone said, "Oh, you have your home office and you come in whatever days suit you." And we've decided we're like, no, actually, we're taking this all back. Everyone's going to come in on like a Wednesday and a Thursday. Everybody, no excuses.
Yeah.
It was met with some harsh critics. Now we've been doing it about 6 weeks. Everyone loves it because everyone gets to see everyone. It creates better environments. People are actually happy being in the office when everyone else is in the office.
Yeah.
But to get it to that level, people had to be really angry.
Yeah.
Change management, I guess. But that was part of us building that. But throughout that then as well, yes, we will have certain days where we have yoga mornings, we have lunchtime walks where anyone who wants to go out and walk, we have beers, we have yoga at 5 p.m. on certain days so that everyone has something that they're involved with. So it wasn't easy. It took a long time, lots of change management. What's it like in your experience to create an engineering culture, particularly in a modern day remote working world, where some people, if they could choose, would choose zero office time, which ultimately leads to not a failed culture, but it won't create what you need for for let's say like hyper growth, fast growth, delivery, engagement.
Yeah. It's pretty similar to the example which you just wait. You know, like it's a bit like, especially after this COVID time, everyone was like, let's stay at home. It's so easy. But often they don't know what they're missing, you know, like, and I think one thing which brings a lot of trust and is very helpful, and maybe that was also the case, like in your case, maybe that was also in your case, I'm sorry. Maybe that was also in your case. So the topic that you created this kind of fixed structure of when people need to come, right? Like this come that you can count on that. Everyone is there. We do it every day. It's always like this. It's something like a tradition, you know? And I think if you think in that way, why people have kind of confidence and kind of more trust in specific things, it's because it's reliable. Like it's always there. Like if everyone comes in on the Wednesday, you know, okay, in next month on a Wednesday I have to be in the office. Like you already know in advance that that it will be like that, and that creates a lot of trust because you can organize around that. If it's changing every 2 days or every week, then it's really problematic, and people are not so happy. And that's usually the case if you have this kind of flexible scenario. I would not say hybrid, because in a hybrid scenario you can also have fixed structures. But if you are like, yeah, one of the engineers maybe is coming this week on a Wednesday, next week on a Monday, nobody can count on him. Yeah, all right. If you want to discuss something in face to face, you need to make fixed meetings with that person. But if it's anyways like that everyone is there, that creates already a lot of structure and helps in that kind of scenario. And I think this kind of having this kind of face-to-face conversations, meeting the people, having some kind of small talk and stuff like that, that helps a lot for the culture, eating together and things like that. So it's all these things which AI can't do, that's mainly what you have to do.
It is it. And I've been like, even though like culture is, it's people going for lunch together, it's people going for a coffee together,
Yeah.
sitting at the water cooler, sitting in a meeting room instead of having it over a video, right? And I think this is what I was going to lead on to ask. So we come from the generation where everyone used to be in the office 5 days a week, right? That was normal for me. People in the last 3 years, that is not normal for them. So the level of flexibility that they look for isn't right. And I don't want to look, in some cases, I am just going to say it, right? In some cases, the more younger junior people have like an expectation that they deserve more flexibility. But we know a good culture is created by being around the people that you work with.
Yeah.
How do we combat that without saying, look, we just know better? Because ultimately we do know better. We've done it a long time. I know in my industry, the best performing years were 5 days a week in the office.
Yeah.
That was how it is.
Yeah. I mean, this the younger generation, there is some kind of, like, I have some understanding that they want this flexibility, and I think it's also important so to not ignore it fully. But at the same time, I was playing a lot football, and I think younger generations are also love that game or any other kind of team sport. Okay, and the reason why, for example, I and my team, when I was playing like years ago, had this kind of strong relationship inside of the team, and it was working so well. Like we didn't even have a coach, like it was really like different kind of players with different kind of roles in the team. One was organizing the training, the other one was responsible for the finance and stuff like that. And the reason why it worked so well is because we were physically there. We were working together. We do training together and stuff like that. So in a remote scenario, it's pretty impossible to do that. I mean, you can do remote sessions, pair programming and stuff like that, but not in a bigger team. Like you can do one-on-ones maybe in a good way in a remote scenario, but not. I would say it's totally different when you have a whole team. And if the younger generation ever had this experience of being in a sports team or something like that, I think they will understand that.
Yeah. No, good. I totally agree. My ambition is that in 6 weeks' time, me and my team will be in the office 7 days a week. And unfortunately, that's just going to be a prerequisite that you're going to, before you join my team, this is what you have to agree to. Yeah, it's going to be a new team. So we'll see how that goes. But this is where I wanted to sort of chat to you a little bit more about. We've already talked about expectation setting in terms of communication. So that is an expectation. I'm setting it on the very first level of communication to me, which will be a job spec, right?
Mhm.
When I interview, I'll tell them again, when I'm in the office, we'll talk about it every day. We're in here every day. So I'm hammering home that expectation.
Yeah.
What other expectations we set people is how to do their job, how that they react and participate as part of a team. Some cases we spoke about that. But if we want to set them expectations, not only of to be in the office, but of how to perform their task during the week, I don't think it's reasonable to say to them up to their desk every day, just so you know, Peyman, we expect you to have this done by Friday. Come up on Tuesday, same again. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, same again. So even though we're still setting an expectation, you cannot do it the same way. If we're talking about expectation of work outputs, how do you feel about communicating that effectively?
Yeah, just a short question about that scenario which you described. Why do you have expectation on how people exactly do that?
And how people what? Sorry,
How people execute?
how do I do it? So
No,
for
but
me,
you said you set up expectations, right? You also set up the expectation what they should deliver, but also on how they should deliver it,
yes,
right?
yes.
The question is why you have this expectation on the how.
So I leave, I would say, 80% to be extremely process driven. And that 20% that is like, I'll say, and I hate to say it, like Anthony says, this is how we do a sales call. This is how we represent. This is how we add data. This is how we message and manage our performance and stuff. Everything on LinkedIn, right? Everything is process. Very same way if in engineering you find a ticket, there's processes. Everything is process driven.
Mm-hmm.
I leave about 20% not process driven in the hope that someone can do it better than me or for innovation. But also, if I have to go to Berlin for a client meeting on Wednesday or Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I can still come back with the expectation that Johnny said he would have these 5 tasks done by Friday. Even if I'm not there, they should be still relatively achievable.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the ideal situation that I'm not there, but in some cases, right, as you said, startup world, we can plan for everything.
Mm-hmm. From what I understand, like the processes is pretty important, and I agree. It's also in the engineering field like that. The thing is, like when you set up a process and you decide that it needs to be in that way, then it's a top-down decision. Okay, and then people are in general like no, like it's often like that. What I do often, I don't know if you did this in that case, but what I do often is I try to create the process together with the team. Like we had a strategy day, for example, and we said we need some kind of new processes. How should we do that? And I moderate it, so I bring my kind of ideas in, and I give them some kind of guidance. But in the end, the team itself creates the process, and if the outcome is the right one, and I'm happy with that, then more or less everyone is happy because they feel like I was involved. They heard my opinion about it. I could bring some value into the creation of this process, and then everyone is usually like much more motivated to follow this process. Yeah, that is one way of how to avoid this kind of top-down decisions and involve the team to make sure, okay, the process which you like to have and the team wants to also have a specific process, they can come together and decide on that together and implement it. Because in the end, they have to do it, right? Like you can think of the craziest things, but it has an effect on them on how they work every day, 8 hours.
Yeah. And again, I totally agree. Something that we would do, we would have strategy days, vision days. We would have an on the floor session where we're going to talk about everything that we could ask a hiring manager when they say we need a software engineer. What are all the questions we can ask them? Go, right, does everyone agree that this is what we do when we speak to a hiring manager who's hiring a software developer? And they're like, great.
Yeah.
weirdly enough, 30 minutes on the fly, process created. Sometimes it is that easy, but these are the processes that we follow. And also, this is where I say, right, I do feel they have to be given their follow to, as I said, 80%, because I do feel if you have these sessions and you don't make the solid process out of it, quality slips. There isn't a culture of like, then I can have a culture of minimum expectations of this is what I expect from you as a minimum quality level. So I can add that into a layer of culture, or team expectations, right? And I think that's where it comes from, because as I said, the only thing I will never want to be that person that I can tell people, yeah, every day be here at 8:30, and I can say that every day. But I don't want to be the guy that comes in every day at 8:30. Are you still going to deliver this by Friday? Tuesday, you still delivering this by Friday? Wednesday, how are we looking for Friday? That is not a good way to communicate a target, but you can, so that's why I would prefer to create processes, because they can create accountability for the team member to say, right, I know this, I have to do it. I said I'll do it by Friday. I know they do it. So all I have to do, maybe check in with them once and say, hey, look, how are you getting on? How are you getting on to the standards we set out halfway through the week? We good?
Yeah. And I would say, like there are always also sometimes people who are still not satisfied with that, like there are always some kind of people where it doesn't work for them, and that is how it is. You can't make everyone happy, mainly. But when, like, if you have, for example, a scenario where somebody can't reach the goal, and then it's also worth it, I think, to jump into that topic to see why. What is the reason? Can you or someone else in the team maybe help this person to deliver that or improve on that so that it doesn't happen again in the future? This kind of helping each other, from a supervisor, but also inside of the team, is also something what makes the team stronger and the culture. Like it's like we help each other. It's not a one-man show and like elbow mentality or something like that.
Yeah. I fully believe in that, and it's a case that if you do have that process, and if they still get it wrong with the process, it's not a case of you're being reprimanded, you're being punished, you're being fired, right?
Yeah.
It's a case that, look, you got it wrong. Where did you struggle? That's what's important, I think, out of it. And again, another reason why it's left to 80%. If it's 100%, it's never. It's just not creating that right mentality. I wanted to ask you quickly, because I appreciate I've spent a lot of time talking about how to communicate with your team members, a lot more than I'd anticipate we would. But I wanted to talk about before that. So before they're your team members, before they even join your business, you've got to communicate expectations, what you're looking for, everything like that. But not only in how you communicate with them, you also have to communicate internally, a hiring process, how you want your business to be represented, how you communicate outwards of who we are and what we do. What's your experience like in recruitment processes, and what have you seen in the past that, look, you can say if it shocked you, you can say if it's been good, what's been bad?
Yeah, it goes in the direction of the marketing for the engineering team, right? Like that's what you mean, right? Like external view on it. Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
it's I guess, not to jump into it to go too far ahead, but it's the message that you send outwards, that when someone joins, they join because of that message, and that message is ultimately the same message of what they should get, right? If you tell them, oh, look, we're a great team, even everyone goes for drinks on Fridays, but if you join a business and nobody even comes into the office on Fridays, you're like, well, how do I feel now?
So first of all, it is always a bit related to the business case which the startup has. But in general, what I tell everyone, and that's really, I'm really honest with that. That's my target, is to make everyone be able to grow, like existing team members, but also everyone who joins the team, because everyone who joins will ask you. I mean, they don't ask you maybe directly, but in the end, they have in their head, what can I become here? Like, what what will I learn? What is the value for me? How can I go on with my career? And the communication which I do internally and then also externally in the conversations with candidates is that I'd really try to build a kind of really strong team which helps each other, which learns from each other, and is doing also like cutting edge technology development. And most of, like, a lot of people are interested in that. And they like innovative topics, and these are the people who I try to attract. Because like a lot of people from corporates, for example, do not join my teams, because the work which I do with my teams are mainly like we're working on innovative topics, like we try to drive it further, and you can be a bit crazy about that, like it's interesting to exchange different ideas and be open, have this kind of open minds for new ideas, even when it's sometimes really crazy. And I think one thing is also that this kind of diverse, cross-functional, these kind of topics, then you have different people from different fields, help a lot to build this team. And that's also what I sell from outside. Okay, so I don't want or let's say I want a diverse team. I want people with different ages. I want people from different kind of countries, nationalities, identifications, and so on. I had that always, like since I'm in Berlin, I always had these kind of teams, and I felt it is very beneficial for everyone. It was beneficial for me to learn about new cultures, learn about new kind of perspectives, and from what I see is you can create better products and technology when you have these kind of different people in the team. It's sometimes a bit more stressful because you need to arrange these different people. But if they have the same kind of idea of they want to work in a cross-functional team, they want to work in a mixed and diverse team, then this is something what they have in common, and they run into one direction. Yeah, that's mainly
Nice.
the answer to that.
Nice. And if we talk about your experience, and let's say not the communication elements of it, but with the hiring parts of it,
Mm-hmm.
where have you learned from being a senior engineer to now being sparring partners to CTOs, helping engineering teams with create cultures? What do you know now about interviewing that you've changed in how you now do it? And I mean that like it could be the process, it could be the length of the interviews, the stages, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think one thing is that I start pretty early to interview other engineers. Um, and in the beginning, I didn't know how to do that. But it was very much learning by doing. Like I figured out what kind of people would fit in the end to the team. And one focus was not too much on the technology field. It was more on the character, on the ability of the person to be open to learn new things, because like you can teach them more or less everything, right? Like, or they can learn, in the best case they are self-driven, they can learn technology topics by themselves, but it needs to be really a good fit into the team. So I think that was one thing, like that I started very early with this kind of process. And what was the second part of your question?
It was just about like stages, how
Stages.
long the interviews last.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Um, it depends a bit, but I think it is like 3 or 4 different stages. And the very first one is usually a screening interview, which is very short by an HR person. Then we have often a technical interview where you meet the candidate and you can try to figure out what kind of technical abilities the person has. And I rarely do coding challenges or something like that. First of all, because with ChatGPT, you can do everything right now. But it's more about, like, I have conversations usually to figure out, do they understand the concepts? Because most of the time I hire already skilled senior engineers, not so often junior engineers, to be honest, because the startups which I work with, they're often in an earlier stage and they need experienced people. Yeah, that's usually the second interview. And then we have often a third one, maybe with the CEO or with the CPO if there's a product person, and a last one with the whole team so that they can figure out. I think it's pretty standard, to be honest. But I try to do it pretty quick. Like, I think speed is very important in that scenario. Like, I see sometimes corporates where it takes a month before they come back to you. Like, they will never find an engineer from my perspective, like we really try to have quick feedback sessions to the candidates, and within 1 or 2 days you can take a decision. I would not take the decision at the same day because it's always good to have 1 day of thinking and just figuring out, rethinking of how the candidate was for you. But in general, every 2-3 days, like after 2-3 days, you can expect a feedback.
Yeah. Nice. Ready to move on to the quick fire questions, Peyman?
Sure.
Good. Look, you're a mentor to other people. Is there a piece of content that you would recommend to other aspiring founders, entrepreneurs out there? It could be a movie, it can be a podcast, it can be a book.
Yeah. So besides this podcast, there are some kind of, like, there's one book which I liked a lot. It's a German author. His name is Reinhard Sprenger, and he has several books, mainly about leadership. And he has good explanation. I don't agree with everything what he wrote, but he has some kind of good explanations of how to grow and how to become a leader, what kind of things you can do to learn that. And just to say, like, his focus is really self-leadership. It's not so much like he's trying to enable everyone so that you don't need to manage them, that they can manage themselves, and you jump only in mainly when something is really wrong. Like, that's, from my perspective, also the best case, that a leader is there when things are not working and you need to find a solution. And in the best case, everyone can manage and organize themselves.
What about your 3 non-negotiables when it comes to setting yourself up or setting your teams up for success?
Non-negotiable. Like, in which kind of scenario? Like, when
I guess kind of like the rules you set yourself or your team members. Kind of like your principles.
Yeah, like to be honest, like, this kind of cross-functionality, diverse topic, that is pretty important because it's more or less the base. And the second thing is, it's allowed to make mistakes and have failures in the team. And the last one, maybe, you need to be curious.
And Peyman, the final question for you. What would you do differently if you could do it all again?
What would I do if would I do or not?
What would you do different if you were to do it all again?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, there, yeah, maybe. I think there's not much, to be honest. I mean, there are some specific scenarios where I had an issue with a former colleague, and I would now manage that in a different way. But I was young, and at that point, I didn't know how to deal with that. Maybe that's the only one. Yeah, it's mainly the conflicts which at that point I didn't know how to deal with. But in the end, that was also the reason why I was so much into leadership and was busy with, okay, how can you organize that in a better way? How can you be a better leader and not be in these kind of situations?
Yeah. Nice. Well, yeah. Look, that takes us up for time for today's episode. For everyone listening, today's guest was Peyman Pouryekta. Peyman, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony. It was so much fun to talk to you.
Thank you. That concludes another enlightening episode of the Leadership Labs podcast. If you found today's episode thought-provoking and informative, be sure to subscribe to the Leadership Labs on your preferred podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you once again for joining us on this journey through the Leadership Labs. Until next time.